Hey everyone, back with Dr. Chaffee, and the question is, are you full carnivore, and to you, what does full carnivore mean?
Yeah, I am. So for me, that just means I just eat, meat, salt, water. Any meat is fine. I don't really care. I just generally
Preference?
Generally beef. So I just tell people eat the meat that you enjoy, that makes you feel the best, and that you can afford. If that's an issue. For me, that's beef. I always feel best when I eat beef. I'll eat pork and chicken sometimes, fish, whatever, and eggs. But I always feel the best when I'm on beef.
Yeah, I think so. Most delicious as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you mentioned Dr. Salisbury before. He found that that for his patients as well back in the 1800s, that beef was definitely the best as well. That lamb was sort of a distant second, but that the red meats were definitely the best. Yeah, as far as nutritional content and so forth. So yeah, as I was saying, I've been very, very strict carnivore since probably February 2018 when I got back from doing humanitarian work in Bangladesh. And
just a quick one on that. How did you go in Bangladesh being semi-carnivore?
Oh, well, I've always been very meat-centric, and they did have meat. And so I would just generally just eat sort of, but I wasn't thinking about it in the context of don't eat plants are poisonous and so forth at that time. Yeah. I always sort of had that because 20 years ago when I was taking cancer biology, we learned how poisonous plants were and how harmful they were, and I stopped eating all plants. Then it was inadvertently a full carnivore for 5 years at that point, and then sort of slipped off of it. But I was always very plant avoidant and carb avoidant and so forth because of that. So I would when there's sort of food available, I would generally eat the meat part of it, and would try to avoid the carbs and avoid the vegetables and so forth, just because I don't like vegetables. And also that should tell you something evolutionarily. Like, why would we hate the taste of something that we evolved on? The bitter taste is significant. Our sense of taste is very important to our survival. You notice something that's bitter, that is your brain and your tongue telling you this contains something that's bad for you. That bitter taste is something bad for you. So you should listen to that. There are things that are that taste good that aren't good for us, like sugar. That's an outlier. People think that fructose is quite sweet because we don't know of any plants that contain fructose that are acutely poisonous for humans, as in it'll kill you that day. So we recognize this as a safe, quick hit of energy until we can get our normal food. But taken long term, it does, or even short term, it does some serious changes to your body that you don't really want. And if you do that daily, it compounds quite significantly. You have type 2 diabetes, heart disease, things like that. So in Bangladesh, I wasn't. But it would be easy. I mean, there was meat available. I would just only sort of eat that, and then I sort of ended up just sort of eating whatever, just because you're in the camps for the refugee camps. Yeah, for like 16 hours sometimes, and or even overnight sometimes, and you just sort of eat what you can get, basically. Now, knowing that, it's actually easier now when I only eat meat, because I eat fatty meat until I'm full. I'm generally not hungry for 24 or 30 hours. And even if I am hungry and I go oh wow, steak really sounds good, I'd really like to eat. But, when I'm on call at the hospital and so forth, I was like, well, I've got 3 surgeries lined up and I'm going to be working tomorrow. So I'm probably not going to be able to eat for another 24 hours. My body just goes, right, that's okay. And I'm not panicked and freaking out, because my body can see my leptin. Leptin is produced by your fat cells, and that goes to your brain to tell your brain how much energy you have. So, if you're not eating carbohydrates, if you're not eating sugar, which block leptin. Insulin blocks leptin, so if your insulin's up because you've been eating carbohydrates, it blocks leptin, so your brain doesn't see that you have energy, so it gets panicked and says, oh, you have to eat. My brain can see the leptin, so it doesn't get panicked. It knows like, well, you're not going to die. It should be fine.
So generally, do you eat once a day, twice a day? What works for you?
It just depends. So if I'm eating fattier meat, I'm more satiated because you're getting more nutrition, right? So if you have, a kilo of lean beef and a kilo of 50-50 beef and fat by weight, the 50-50 one has 3 times the calorie nutrition as the lean beef, right? Wow. So it's the same weight, but you're getting 3 times the nutrition. So your body's going to want more of the lean beef because you need more of the nutrients, and also you're not going to get the fat. Your body really does want fat. Animals in the wild get about 70-80% of their calories from fat, and so that's an important part of that. So I find that if I'm eating sort of more lean, I eat more, pounds of steak, more weight of steak, and because I have a finite amount of room in my stomach, I'll end up eating more times during that day.
Yeah.
If I'm eating fattier stuff, it's much less. And it's actually, as far as cost is concerned, so maybe a fatty cut is maybe a little more expensive than a lean cut, depending on what you do. Quite a lot of fatty things like chuck steaks and things like that.
It's actually cheaper.
Much cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have very good fat content.
Yeah.
But let's say it's more expensive. Let's say it's a few dollars more expensive a kilo. Well, you're getting 3 times the value for your dollar. Nutritionally, if it's 50% sort of thing. And so those are raw figures, but you figure if something's twice the price, then you're like, all right, well maybe it's kind of equivocal. But if it's a few dollars more, you're actually getting more bang for your buck with the fattiness. And also like we said, like chuck steak and things like that are generally cheaper. And so if I'm getting fatty food, I generally don't eat as much. If I'm working out a lot, if I'm blessed to have the time to actually go to the gym, I will my body will want more energy. And that's pretty simple. So, during COVID, when I wasn't able to work out or go to the gym, I was generally eating about 1 kilo of steak a day. When I was able to get back into the gym and start lifting, I made sure that I could go to the gym sort of 4 days a week at least. And I was lifting quite hard back on my sort of professional lifting program that I had when I was playing professionally. And I ended up literally doubling that. So I would have basically 2 kilos a day. Sometimes maybe a bit more, throw in some eggs or something like that. But I also just was stacking on weight as well. I was 92 kilos at the end when the gyms opened back up in Perth, and then in about 4 or 5 weeks, I was 105 kilos. And the same body fat percentage. Yeah.
So your body had kind of just adapted to less exercise, less stimulus, and just reverted back to a lighter frame.
Yeah, well, I'd been like that for a while because I hadn't been really working out that much anyway, just because work was very busy. But then when I couldn't go to the gym, it really bothered me. So I was just like, the whole time I was just chomping at the bit. I was just like, okay, as soon as these gyms open, like I'm going after it, and just making the time. And so I had obviously a big response. Obviously, because I hadn't been working out in a long time, you get a lot of beginner gains and things like that. There's a lot of room to improve there. I've sort of hit around 110 now, and I'm sure I could get higher than that. I know I could, but with the amount that I'm able to work out, that seems to be where I'm sort of stabilized now.
You're not desperate to become heavier anyway. Yeah, exactly. So you prefer to eat in the middle of the day, at the end of the day, at the start of the day?
I generally prefer to eat at the end of the day, just because, when you're in this, I've always, in rugby, I always played hungry. That was something I noticed early on, and intermittent fasting people sort of notice this as well. When you
notice this, but I think most people don't notice that.
Really?
Yeah. Before I was playing sport, you have like a honey sandwich to try and get that little buzz.
Oh yeah.
As you're running out, and then second quarter or second half, you're absolutely cooked. So I think you discovered this stuff that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was lucky to figure that out. Yeah, I would even notice that I'd feel better if I didn't eat dinner the night before.
Wow.
And then I just wouldn't eat the entire day. I never ate on a game day because if I ever ate, I would notice right away like I wasn't as good because I've played hungry many times. I noticed how that went, and then if I'd eat, it'd be like, well, I just feel like crap. I don't have energy, or certainly not to the same extent. And if I'm playing like in a tournament or sevens tournament or something like that, like God forbid you eat something, then you may be good for like one game, like a honey sandwich or something, but you're screwed. Yeah. And you're sort of chasing that glucose, insulin spikes and things like that. So I always played hungry anyway, and that always made me feel better. And so I would eat sort of afterwards, and I always noticed that. And so I noticed that when I'm sort of on an empty stomach, you have that more like hunter mentality. You're like, I have to go get my kill. I have to go. You're hyper attuned. You've got energy. Your body's producing it. So you're like, you have to go get your kill. You have to go get your food. And then when you get that, your body's like, it turns into rest and digest metabolism. So okay, we've got the energy, we don't need to expend anymore, you want to conserve. Nature is all about conservation, it's all about being very, very efficient. So it doesn't want you to, your nature, your biology doesn't want you to expend energy unnecessarily. Okay. So while you're going to get your food for that day, your body's giving you the energy that you need to go get this done. And as soon as you get that done and you eat until you're full, your body goes, chill out. So I noticed that, where I feel better during the day if I just, go throughout my day. Yeah, exactly. And then when I eat to satiation, I'm ready for bed. I just want to like pass out, and I sleep, like a baby. If I were to eat during there, sometimes I am, like, when I'm working out heavily or whatever, I'll probably eat twice a day. I notice that I feel much better if I don't quite eat as much as I want to. I'll still have a bit of that fight left in me. Whereas if it's like, 10 in the morning or breakfast, something like that, and eat like a big meal, then I'm just very, I'm just like, oh, I just don't want to do anything. I don't feel like bloated. I don't feel bad. I just feel very relaxed, very calm. I have no pressure to go out and be busy. Yeah, you just feel good. You just want to chill out.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And are you into bone broth or organs or anything like that?
I don't eat those myself.
Yeah.
But they're fine. Organs are great. You don't need them. I know different people say that you do, but you don't. The Inuits don't eat the organs and so forth. They feed those to the dogs. We've known that for 100 years, at least. And different polar explorers that went up there with.
But that's interesting, because we often get told that Inuits and native people would go straight for the liver.
Maybe.
They want to kill.
Maybe they eat some of that sometimes.
Yeah.
But
that's not for you.
No.
Yeah.
I eat it sometimes. Yeah. But
this is more the Shawn Baker approach, really. I think he's pretty much a kilo and a half of steak a day, and he's obviously doing very well.
Yeah, it's a big dude. Yeah. So I think it's probably more on the 2 kilos a day sort of thing. Just because he's I'm 6'3", he's 6'5", and he's heavier than I am, and he works out like a champ every single day.
Yeah.
So his body's going to be wanting a lot of that energy. And when I'm able to do heavy workouts, my body wants that too. It's just like give it. But then I don't always get the chance to do that, and so I don't always have that hunger drive either.
Yeah, amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dr. Chaffee.
No worries.
Yeah, strict carnivore, mainly steak. Fatty steak when you can get it. Generally once a day.
Yeah.
I like to eat towards the latter end of the day.
I find that I feel better doing that. And one thing I will say about fat content and so forth. One thing that I've noticed with myself and with patients and so forth is that people don't know how much fat to eat, and they generally think, when I say that eat a lot of fat, they think just eat more fat than they have before. That, that's a lot of fat, and in fact they're actually getting quite a poor percentage.
You're saying it's still not enough.
Well, a lot of these people would not really get a lot of fat, and they'll notice that because they'll say, well, I'm getting really constipated. So how constipation works, in my view, is that it's not actually, no one needed fiber before the 1980s. That was another thing we said with fiber. It's like, oh, you should eat fiber to move things through very quickly and so forth. And it's just like, well, why didn't we need these before 1986? Why was everybody fine before that without any fiber or so forth, or minimal fiber? That's because they had fat in their diet. It's actually fat that moves your digestion. So your body, it's very difficult for your body to absorb fat without bile. Okay, that's the purpose of bile. People say, well, that's another argument. Why are people saying that fat's bad for you if you have 4 organs working in concert just to absorb fat? Your liver makes bile, your gallbladder absorbs it or stores it, and then secretes it when you have it, and then your pancreas sets out enzymes, break it down, and your small intestine absorbs it. Okay, so you have 4 organs working together just to absorb fat. That's a lot of energy expenditure from your body and from your evolutionary standpoint to absorb something that's really bad for you, that your body doesn't want. That doesn't make any sense. So it's quite hard for your body to absorb this without bile. Your liver makes about 800 to 1,000 mils of bile a day. It makes it very, very slowly, sort of slowly dripping out. And people have their gallbladder removed, it just sort of drips out slowly into their intestines. So when it goes into your gallbladder, it stays there, and when you eat something fatty, it sort of expresses this stuff out. Okay? And then your body is able to absorb the fat with that. Okay? Then people avoid fat and so forth. And that can cause gallstones and problems because this is sitting there, and it concentrates. People don't realize that it doesn't just sit there in its normal concentration. It actually normally can concentrate up to 20 times. Some people might concentrate more than that. Well, what happens to a solution that's hyper concentrated solution at rest. It's going to form precipitating crystals. That's what bile sludges. That's what gallstones are. Generally, people say like, oh, this is because you ate too much fat. That's why you have these sorts of things. But generally, you'll find it's the people that have gone on a diet to lose fat and they've stopped eating fat for months.
So it's the opposite.
It's the opposite, yeah. And so then all of a sudden they start eating fat again. They go, oh, that hurts. And they go to the doctor
because they gallstone.
Because now they have because now it's trying to squeeze out fat and the stone gets stuck. Yeah, and the stone gets stuck in there because it's formed a crystal. Yeah. And they go to the doctor and go, oh, and he goes, you have gallstones. That's because you eat too much fat, you big fat bitch. It's just like, no, actually, it's because they didn't eat fat. And that's exactly what it is. You see this in people that have bariatric surgery as well. They have a
bariatric surgery.
Yeah, they're taking out part of their stomach and their small intestine to basically make it very difficult for them to eat. Okay, and so when you show radical weight loss solutions, sort of things.
Okay,
and
like
so
a stomach bend or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sort of thing. And then these sorts of people have a massive rate of gallstones. And I've heard people say, it's like, well, that when people lose weight really fast, it does something, changes their metabolism some way and somehow and gets these stones. We don't really know why. And you'll talk to these people, and because they're so desperate to lose weight, they go through this extremely dangerous and difficult and painful surgery. And it's very, it's not a nice recovery. And they're very, they're like, sir, I'm not going to, eat fat, because they want to lose fat. So they're really serious about this. And so they just stop eating all fat because that's what they're told. And I've heard a number of people get told that they have gallstones, and they're incensed. They're like, look, that can't be true. That can't be possible, because I haven't eaten any fat in months. And I just want to tell them, like,
exactly.
That's why you have gallstones. So bile's for absorbing fat. When you eat fat, as you're supposed to, secretes it out there. But this is a finite resource. Again, this is dripping out very slowly, around 800 milliliters a day, right? So it's coming out very slowly. Your liver's not just making a whole bunch of it in one go. It just steadily makes it. And so you run out, okay? Well, what happens when you run out and you have more fat than you have bile for? At that time, your body will keep making bile after that. But right now, you're out of bile, right? Well, that fat can't get absorbed, really. There's some that can, but to a low degree. And so it'll get excreted, okay? Well, oil repels water, right? Fat repels water. So it's already dehydrated. The whole argument for why you should eat fiber is because it'll move things quickly before it gets too dried out. Well, the whole point of your large intestine is to dry it out. Okay. You want to bring that water back in. You're not trying to just waste water. You have to think of these things. Your body's going to be efficient. And so anything that's inefficient in wasting water, wasting nutrient, you have fiber so that you don't absorb food, so that you don't get calories, so that you expel water when you don't need to. That's not a recipe for survival in the wild, during really rough times. So you're supposed to be absorbing the water, and when there's fat in your feces, in your stools, it can absorb all the water it wants, but the fat is still in there to keep it soft. Okay, so that can stay in your colon until Christmas. It's not going to get any drier than it is, and it's going to stay soft. So that's how you know how much fat you're getting. If you're going to absorb 99% of the meat that you eat if you don't eat fiber and screw the whole deal up. So you're going to excrete much less because you're actually absorbing. Waste is
which a lot of people find when they first do carnivore. They're amazed that they're not doing number twos.
Well, that's it.
Or if they are, they're tiny. It's like a rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. And they think that, this means I'm constipated, this means I'm constipated, this is bad. Well, no, actually it's good. It means you're absorbing everything. It's when it's dry and hard, that's constipation, not just low frequency. Outside of this way of eating, if you have low frequency, it's probably because you're constipated, because things are dry and hard, not moving very fast. But the actual definition of that is dry, hard stools. And so you can get dry, hard stools, but you'll get them because you don't eat enough fat, because your body's absorbing absolutely every ounce of fat that you have, because you have a surplus of bile to fat. And so none of the fat or very little of it's getting through, right? And so if you have a little bit excess, then things are going to be soft. If you have a lot of excess, things will get, more slippery. But You know, there's like when
Joe Rogan did.
yeah.
In his first movie, he called it explosive diarrhea.
Yeah. So he overwent. But the thing is, but he wasn't sick. That's not an infection. You know,
No,
it's not,
no,
you know what I mean?
just
It's not bad for you. It's just inconvenient. you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's not actually a harmful thing. And if you like what you're eating and you don't really mind the effects, well, then it doesn't really matter. It's not harming you. And if you don't like that, then you just pull back the fat a bit. Yeah, exactly. So you know exactly how much fat you're getting based on that.
But also, am I right in saying that your body will learn to produce more bile? Is that right?
I've never seen a study that says that. It could be.
It felt like that for me. I felt like, the diarrhea went away, but I wasn't reducing the amount of fat that I was eating. That was my experience anyway.
Were you eating all at the same time as well, or were you sort of eating at different times?
No, like 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah, but you were consistently eating sort of at similar times, and then you just sort of
and then after a while, it stopped.
Yeah, well, it could be. You know, it's I haven't. You know, I don't know if anyone's really looked at it. Maybe they have. You know, but it would stand to reason that they would. That your body would sort of adapt.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're used to not getting a lot of fat for a long time, your body's not just going to keep making bile because again, it's efficient and so forth. But you know, then I don't think that it would make more than is physiologically good for you to absorb fat. You know what I mean? So it's the amount of bile that you have equals the amount of fat that you can absorb.
Yes.
And I don't think you generally don't find your body doing something that's out of balance physiologically. You know, you don't make unless you damaged your thalamus. You know, you don't make a fever that's going to damage your brain.
Yeah, that's right. You couldn't train your body to produce like liters of bile. I don't know why you would want to.
No, not unless you had some sort of disease or something like that.
It stands to reason that you would cap out it, as you say, based on how much fat you can actually absorb.
Yeah, so I tend to just listen to my body in that sense. I trust my body knows how much fat it wants, and so I just, eat accordingly. People might have different sort of genetic issues that would make them produce a different amount of bile than they need. Maybe these are some of the people that are getting more bile stones than others because they just produce much more. It's hard to say, but the vast majority of people can just eat what their body sort of recommends to them if you know sort of how to read the signs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.